Rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
Huh?
Rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
You better fucking not. I swear to God, I'll fucking shoot you right in your fucking face.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop the fucking pot! Drop the fucking pot! Drop the fucking pot!
19 shots fired.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Drop the fucking pot! Bring EMS now. We got a headshot wound to the female. Headshot wound to the female. 1078. Fuck.
It's just after midnight in Woodside Township, Illinois. Body camera footage shows two deputies standing outside a small single-story home. The porch light flickers, revealing a quiet neighborhood where the only movement comes from insects circling the bulbs. Deputy Sean Grayson steps forward first, his voice cutting through the silence. "Are you coming to the door or not? All right, hurry up." A few seconds pass. The door opens. Standing inside is 36-year-old Sonya Massey. Barefoot, shaking, clutching her phone. Her first words are not of anger or resistance. They are a plea. "Don't hurt me." Her tone carries exhaustion and fear, not defiance. She had called 911 moments earlier, reporting that she thought someone was trying to break into her home. The deputies she expected to protect her had now become the source of her anxiety. Grayson's body camera is off, violating policy. The only record of the encounter comes from his partner, Deputy Dawson Farley. Through his lens, we see the difference between two people. One seeking safety, the other already impatient. Grayson pushes for control, questioning Sonya with short, clipped phrases. She stammers, trying to explain that she'd heard noises outside, that she only wanted help. As she speaks, she keeps her eyes lowered, aware of the gun on his hip, aware of her own vulnerability. In the footage, the exchange lasts only minutes, but it's enough to expose the imbalance of power that will define the rest of the night. A woman in distress, calling for protection, faces a man whose record should have disqualified him from wearing a badge at all. By sunrise, Sonya Massey will be dead, shot inside her own kitchen by the deputy standing at her door. This case began with 3 words: "Don't hurt me." If you want more real investigations told through the truth, not speculation, subscribe to True Crime British. To understand how a simple 911 call ended in murder, we have to go back to who Sonya was and to the long trail of warnings that led Sean Grayson to that front porch. Sonya Lynn Massey was born on February 12, 1988, in San Diego, California. From a young age, she carried a warmth that seemed to draw people toward her. Family and friends often said she had a way of making others feel safe, a quality that became central to her life as both a daughter and a mother. By her mid-30s, Sonya's life revolved around her 2 children, Malachi and Jeanette. Every decision she made centered on their well-being. Her home in Woodside Township, near Springfield, Illinois, was modest but full of laughter and the rhythm of daily family life. Behind her smile was a constant battle. Sonya lived with lupus, an autoimmune disease that caused chronic pain and fatigue. It made everyday tasks difficult, but it never stopped her from being present for her children. Her mother, Donna Massey, would later describe her daughter as tired but unstoppable. Even during the worst flare-ups, Sonya found strength in her faith. Her Bible stayed close, not as decoration but as a lifeline. Verses marked in pen and highlighted in yellow lined the pages, reminders to stay steady when her body and mind were both under strain. Faith was her structure, and it shaped how she handled every hardship. By the summer of 2024, Sonya was under immense pressure. She had recently completed a short stay at a mental health facility in St. Louis, hoping for stability and rest. But after just 2 days back home, her distress returned. In the days before her death, there were 3 separate 911 calls, all requests for wellness checks or assistance, not criminal complaints. One of those calls came from her mother, warning dispatchers that Sonya was in crisis but not a danger to herself or anyone else. Sonya wasn't seeking confrontation. She was asking for help, the kind she had always been willing to give others. On July 6, 2024, that request for help brought 2 deputies to her door, one of whom would end her life. When Deputy Sean Grayson arrived at Sonya Massey's home that July night, He was already carrying a record that should have barred him from any law enforcement badge. His resume looked official on paper, but every line concealed a warning that was ignored. Grayson's career began with the U.S. Army, where he was discharged in 2016 for misconduct. The exact details remain classified, but the nature of his dismissal suggested serious violations, the kind that typically end military service permanently. After leaving the Army, he turned to local law enforcement, a transition that in many states should trigger the most thorough of background checks. That safeguard failed. From 2020 to 2024, Grayson worked for 6 different police departments across Illinois. Each agency had a similar story: a short tenure, complaints about his behavior, and quiet departures that went unrecorded or unshared. It was a textbook case of what policing experts call the wandering officer phenomenon. Officers with documented misconduct leaving one agency, only to be hired by another willing to overlook their history. Grayson's record included 2 DUI convictions, repeated disciplinary actions for poor judgment, and even allegations of inappropriate conduct toward a female detainee, followed by retaliation against her boyfriend. In another posting, he led an unauthorized high-speed pursuit at nearly 120 miles per hour, risking public safety without any valid reason for the chase. Despite this trail of misconduct, in May 2023, the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office hired him to patrol the midnight shift. The department's own policies required background verification and psychological evaluation for all new hires, yet somehow Grayson passed. When the shooting later drew national attention, then Sheriff Jack Campbell defended the decision, claiming there was no indication that anything in his background would lead to a violent event. That statement would haunt the department. As the details of Grayson's past came to light, Campbell's leadership was called into question, and public pressure forced his resignation months later. Grayson's record painted the picture of a volatile man repeatedly given a weapon and authority without accountability. By the time he knocked on Sonya Massey's door, every safeguard meant to keep someone like him off the street had already failed. The night when Sonya Massey reached for her phone and dialed 911. Her voice on the recording was calm but anxious. She told the dispatcher that she heard noises outside her home, something moving near her windows. She was alone, afraid, and certain that someone was trying to get in. The call was logged as a suspected prowler, a standard response code for possible trespassing. 2 deputies from the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to her address: Deputy Sean Grayson and Deputy Dawson Farley. Woodside Township was quiet that night. A few porch lights glowed in the distance, and most homes along Sonya Street were dark. The air was still, interrupted only by the sound of their cruiser pulling up to her driveway. What they found didn't match the sense of emergency. There was no suspect in sight, only a vehicle in the drive with a broken window, which could have been a sign of vandalism or an earlier dispute. The deputies conducted a brief check around the property, flashlights scanning the yard and the sides of the house. Nothing appeared disturbed. Despite the calm scene, Grayson's body camera remained off, in direct violation of policy. Only Farley's camera would capture what followed. When the search ended, the 2 men approached the front door. Grayson knocked sharply, his tone already firm. "Are you coming to the door or not?" "All right, hurry up." Moments later, the door opened. Sonya appeared, her face drawn with worry. Her first words were not of confrontation, but of fear. "Don't hurt me." The footage shows her standing in her living room doorway, clutching her phone, trying to explain that she called for help because she thought someone was outside. Grayson responded with impatience, questioning her instead of offering reassurance. Farley stood back, quieter, observing. The imbalance was immediate, a frightened woman on her own, facing 2 armed officers. Sonya had done what any citizen is told to do in danger: call for help. But at that moment, the help that arrived carried an edge of hostility that would soon turn fatal. Once the door opened, Deputy Sean Grayson took command of the encounter. His voice was sharp, his movements deliberate. He questioned Sonya about what she had heard and whether she was all right. She nodded, still holding her phone, trying to explain that she had seen or heard someone outside. Instead of easing her tension, Grayson pressed harder. When she hesitated to answer quickly, He asked if she had identification and stepped inside her home without formal permission. Deputy Dawson Farley followed, his body camera still recording. Sonya's anxiety was visible. She moved from the doorway toward a small table, sorting through papers and her purse in search of her ID. She spoke quietly, more to herself than to them, repeating short prayers under her breath. Her Bible sat on a nearby counter, and at one point, she asked Grayson to hand it to her. A gesture that showed her confusion and her attempt to steady herself through faith. The deputies stood in her living room, separated from the kitchen by a narrow counter. The room was dimly lit and cluttered with signs of a normal night at home. Dishes in the sink, papers on the table, and a pot of water boiling on the stove. "Ma'am, we don't need a fire while we're here," one of them said when the steam drew their attention. Sonya quickly turned to the stove, lifted the pot by its handle, and moved toward the sink to take it off the heat. The motion made both deputies step back into the living room. Grayson's hand moved near his holster, his tone shifting from tense to confrontational. Sonya looked at them, puzzled. "Why'd you move away?" she asked softly. Grayson replied that he didn't want to be near hot water. It might have ended there, a strange but harmless moment. Instead, Sonya, clinging to her faith amid the confusion, lifted the pot slightly and said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." To her, it was a prayer, a spiritual plea for safety. To Grayson, it became a challenge. He demanded she repeat it. She did. Grayson's reaction was explosive. He slammed his hand onto his weapon and shouted, "You better not, or I'll shoot you in your expletive face." His voice filled the room. Farley drew his gun in reflex but did not fire. Sonya immediately froze. Her fear was unmistakable. "Okay, I'm sorry," she said, setting the pot down, lowering herself behind the counter. Unarmed, apologetic and pleading, despite her surrender, Grayson advanced toward her, closing the distance. From just feet away, he fired 3 shots. One bullet struck Sonya below the eye, killing her instantly. In the silence that followed, Farley called for medical supplies. Grayson looked at her body and said coldly, "She's done. That's a head shot." When Farley tried to give aid, Grayson tossed his own kit beside her and muttered, "I'm not wasting my med stuff." The body camera kept rolling, capturing not only a shooting, but a complete absence of humanity from the man sworn to protect her. The body camera footage from Deputy Dawson Farley continued without pause after the final shot. The sharp echo of gunfire faded, replaced by Sonya's faint breathing. Farley rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside her. His gloves quickly soaked with blood as he tried to apply pressure with a dish towel. Grayson stood only a few feet away, weapon still drawn. He looked down, expression blank, before finally holstering his gun. His first words weren't a call for emergency medical help. Instead, he spoke into his radio. "Do you have any history of mental health calls involving Massey?" The request came too late. The information he sought had been logged the day before. Warnings from Sonya's mother that her daughter was in crisis and needed support, not confrontation. That context had never reached the deputies before they arrived. Farley called for medics, his tone urgent, his hands trembling. Grayson retrieved his own medical kit, glanced inside, and dropped it onto the kitchen floor. "I'm not wasting my med stuff," he said, stepping away. Paramedics and backup units arrived within minutes. The scene turned chaotic as officers filled the small house, securing the perimeter and clearing rooms that were already empty. Dispatchers relayed fragmented updates. Farley tried to explain what happened, his voice cracking as he replayed the sequence. Grayson offered no emotion, only a short statement. "She came at me with boiling water." Supervisors notified internal affairs, and by dawn, senior command had ordered both deputies separated and transported for questioning. News of the shooting spread quickly through the department. By morning, it reached the local press. 2 days later, the body camera footage from Farley's perspective was leaked to the media. The video captured Grayson's verbal threat, Sonya's surrender, and his indifference afterward. Within hours, it was circulating nationwide, sparking outrage across social media and cable news. The Sangamon County Sheriff's Office released a brief statement promising a full investigation, but public reaction was already set in motion. What began as a domestic welfare check had become a national story, one that exposed a department and an officer that should have been stopped long before that night. The killing of Sonya Massey spread rapidly through national headlines. Within days of the footage surfacing, protests began outside the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office and later expanded across Illinois. The video left little room for interpretation. An unarmed woman, pleading for safety, met with lethal force from the very person called to protect her. Community leaders, faith groups, and civil rights organizations gathered in Springfield demanding answers. Vigils were held in front of the county courthouse, where candles formed Sonya's initials on the steps. Her name became a rallying cry on placards and across social media. #Justice for Sonya Massey. Amid the mounting pressure, Sheriff Jack Campbell, who had defended the hiring of Sean Grayson, faced scrutiny over the department's recruitment standards. Internal reviews revealed that Grayson's record, including prior DUIs, misconduct allegations, and a military discharge, had been available to the county's hiring board. The oversight wasn't an accident. It was systemic neglect. By August 2024, Campbell resigned, citing loss of public trust. The Massey family, led by Sonya's parents, Donna Massey and James Wilburn, retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump, whose involvement amplified the case nationally. Together, they formed the Massey Commission, an advocacy group focused on exposing hiring loopholes that allowed dangerous officers to move freely between departments. Their message was simple. Accountability had to reach beyond the individual shooter to the institutions that empowered him. Facing overwhelming evidence and public outrage, Sangamon County moved to settle the family's civil lawsuit. In what became one of the largest pretrial settlements in Illinois history, the county awarded $10 million to Sonya's children, Malachi and Jeanette. While the payment acknowledged wrongdoing, it did little to satisfy calls for reform or criminal justice. National networks aired nightly segments dissecting the case, featuring experts on law enforcement oversight and racial bias. The focus shifted from a single tragedy to a systemic issue, a pattern of negligent hiring and absent accountability across state agencies. Sonya's death had ignited something larger than a lawsuit. It forced Illinois officials to confront how a man with years of documented misconduct could keep finding work in law enforcement. The question was no longer just why Grayson pulled the trigger, but how he ever had a badge to begin with. By October 2025, 15 months after the shooting, Sean Grayson stood trial for first-degree murder. The proceedings took place in Peoria County, following a change of venue to ensure an impartial jury. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, legal analysts, and members of the public who had followed the case from the day the footage was released. At the prosecution's table sat State's Attorney John Milhiser and First Assistant State's Attorney Mary Beth Rogers. Their approach was methodical, built around the evidence captured by Deputy Dawson Farley's body camera. The unbroken account of every command, every movement, every word spoken in Sonya Massey's final minutes. From the outset, Milhiser outlined the state's position clearly. This was not a split-second mistake or an act of fear. It was anger, a personal outburst turned fatal. The prosecution's timeline walked the jury through the sequence shown in the footage. Sonya opening the door with the plea, "Don't hurt me," her attempt to cooperate, searching for her ID and lifting the pot to move it off the heat. The brief spiritual exchange, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." Grayson's immediate threat to shoot her in the face. Sonya's surrender and apology, followed by 3 shots fired as she ducked for safety. Each step underscored that Sonya was unarmed, submissive, and compliant when killed. Deputy Dawson Farley was among the first witnesses called. His testimony matched the footage exactly. He admitted that, in the moments following the shooting, he told investigators he had felt threatened, but later retracted that claim. On the stand, he clarified that Sonya had posed no danger that justified deadly force. Next came Professor Seth Stoughton, a nationally recognized use-of-force expert. He described Grayson's decisions as tactically unsound and inconsistent with any accepted police training. Stoughton explained that once Sonya put the pot down, The proper response should have been to create distance or disengage entirely. There was no reasonable threat, he stated. Only an officer escalating where he should have de-escalated. The defense, led by attorney Daniel Fultz, centered its case on unreasonable fear. They argued that Grayson believed his life was in danger, even if that belief was mistaken. The team portrayed him as a man reacting to what he perceived as a deadly threat, a boiling pot of water and unpredictable behavior. In a calculated move, Grayson took the stand in his own defense. He appeared composed, recounting the events with the detachment of a routine report. He claimed that Sonya's words, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," convinced him she intended to attack. He insisted he fired only after she reacquired the pot and made a throwing motion, a statement flatly contradicted by the footage. During cross-examination, Millhiser highlighted every inconsistency between Grayson's testimony and his original report. He reminded the jury that nowhere in that report did Grayson include his own threat to shoot her or his dismissal of medical aid afterward. "You didn't write telling Ms. Massey that you'd shoot her in the face, did you?" Millhiser pressed. Grayson avoided eye contact. In closing arguments, Millhiser stated firmly, he wasn't scared. He was angry. He reminded jurors that anger, not fear, guided Grayson's trigger pull. Rogers followed with a focused appeal. "She surrendered," he pursued. "He didn't stop until she was on the ground." After 11 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict of second-degree murder. The decision indicated they believed Grayson genuinely felt threatened, but that his belief was entirely unreasonable for a trained officer. In the courtroom, Donna Massey wept quietly as the verdict was read. James Wilburn, Sonya's father, called it a half measure of justice. Relief that there was accountability, but frustration that the charge didn't match the brutality of what was seen on camera. For many watching, the verdict carried a message beyond one man's guilt. It revealed the limits of how far the justice system was willing to go when the killer wore a badge. In the months following the verdict, Illinois lawmakers faced mounting pressure to ensure that what happened to Sonya Massey would never happen again. Her case had exposed a critical flaw in law enforcement oversight: the ease with which officers carrying records of misconduct could move from one department to another, unchecked and unquestioned. By late 2025, legislators introduced a reform package informally known as the Sonya Massey Law. The bill sought to close the loopholes that had allowed Sean Grayson to remain in uniform despite years of documented misconduct. It aimed not at symbolic change, but at structural prevention. The new law mandated comprehensive background checks for every officer applying to an Illinois police agency. It also required full disclosure of disciplinary and misconduct records between departments, ending the practice of redacting or concealing information about an officer's past behavior. Additionally, it called for the creation of independent police merit boards and hiring commissions in counties that previously lacked oversight, panels with authority to review, question, and reject candidates whose records raised concern. For lawmakers and advocates, the measure represented more than a legal fix. It was a statement of accountability. At the signing ceremony, Governor J.B. Pritzker addressed the Massey family directly. He acknowledged that while no law could reverse what happened, the reforms would ensure that future warnings like Grayson's would not be ignored. The legislation passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. In the public eye, it stood as both an acknowledgement of systemic failure and an attempt at restitution through change. For Donna Massey and James Wilburn, the passage of the law was bittersweet. Their daughter's name would now appear in state legal code, a legacy born from tragedy. To them, real justice was not measured by Grayson's prison term, but by preventing the next family from enduring the same loss. Through this law, Sonya Massey's story moved beyond one horrific night. It became a catalyst for reform, proof that even in the face of irreversible loss, change could still be written into law. The footage begins and ends with the same words, "Don't hurt me." They were the first words Sonya Massey spoke when she opened her front door that night, and they echo through every recording, every courtroom replay, every public vigil held in her name. She had called for help. That simple act, trusting the system to protect her, became the decision that cost her life. The betrayal wasn't only in the gunfire but in the years of failures that allowed Sean Grayson to stand in her home wearing a badge he should never have earned. In the months since her death, the footage has become more than evidence. It's a reminder of the distance between fear and authority, of what happens when oversight fails and empathy disappears. Sonya was not armed, not defiant, not a threat. She was a mother trying to protect herself in the only way she knew, by calling those sworn to serve. Her children, Malachi and Jeanette, now grow up without the woman who shaped their world. Her parents continue to speak her name at community gatherings, ensuring that Sonya is remembered not for the way she died, but for the change her story forced into motion. Sean Grayson awaits sentencing scheduled for January 29, 2026. Prosecutors have announced plans to seek the maximum penalty allowed by law. As the state prepares to close the final chapter in court, one truth remains fixed. Sonya Massey's call for help reshaped the laws meant to protect others. This is True Crime British, where we document the truth, one case at a time. Don't forget to subscribe. Her story began with fear, but its legacy speaks in reform. A call for justice that will not fade.